deadline, you can do it before. And he's like, what? I thought
I
that's
know,
what
it's
they had.
crazy.
And he just kinda, wow, how do you?
Hello, Mike.
You're an educated kid here, aren't
We should chat. You've been
It was
seeing
at the
the
start of his
copied.
college career, it was his first
So we'll
one.
Live on YouTube.
you? Okay,
So
great.
out of this one, maybe make sure you guys.
Ready to go, huh? Well, that says 6:15, mine says 5:14.
Hello.
5:14.
That one hasn't been changed yet.
That's
You know,
ahead of
do
time.
that tomorrow.
Clear, feel it, Randy, because that was a better system on Facebook because you don't need a Facebook account anyone.
Alrighty.
Now I got 5:15.
Just at the very end.
Put your microphone, hit your microphone.
That's right, gotta be green. Okay, we're gonna head and start our city council meeting tonight. I think we're we're live rolling here, we're ready to go. Randy, you online?
I am.
And is Mike online? No, he's gone, isn't he? I'm trying,
Mike will not be here tonight, so he did call in and express some opinions to me, so I can convey those when we get there.
okay, sounds good. And then Jake is not joining us tonight?
He said he will hopefully join at the closed session, so I'm gonna text him.
Okay, okay, good enough. Let's,
Nice online on YouTube. It's nice.
good. Well, hopefully you're safe and all the best to your husband and to you, Randy. Hope things go well there. So let's go ahead and we'll start. Yeah, let's see. I'll lead us, let's see, we have an invocation by Jake, who's not here, so I'll go ahead and say it. And then the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll just knock it out of the park here tonight, okay? I'll go ahead and start us.
Good to
here.
help too.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this evening that we can gather together as a council and to deliberate and discuss the affairs of the city. And as we proceed this evening, we ask that Thou would guide us and direct us as we discuss the different issues and items that are before us, that we'll be conscientious and thoughtful in the process, that those that attend this evening from the citizenry will be able to feel welcome and have the opportunity to speak if they so desire, and do so freely and with be able to express their thoughts and ideas. We're grateful for our city staff and all the wonderful work and preparation they do for our council meetings. We pray that they will be continued in health and in strength, that they'll make good decisions throughout their daily activities, that they will be able to accomplish the affairs of the city. And we pray this evening for all those that stand in need of thy help and guidance, that we'll be able to get through this pandemic in a thoughtful and manageable way, that we'll be able to follow the guidelines that are given to us from the county health department and the state, that we'll be able to mediate and lessen the impact of this pandemic. And we pray for these things, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Audience, will you please arise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's a little challenging, but we made it through. All right, let's go ahead and do a roll call. Van, you want to start us off?
Van Broderick, present.
Jeff Acerson, present.
Carolyn Lundberg, present.
Mike Venturi is excused this evening. Jake Hoyt is... Good, thank you, Randy. And Jake Hoyt may join us later. We'll note that when he comes online. Approval of the minutes of October 19th, 2020. If there are any corrections or additions, now would be the time to share those, if any. Yes, go ahead, Randy.
Small one, but I did email Kathy on it. It was just a spelling on a name, so it's already been taken care of with Kathy.
Thank you, Randy. Okay,
I have no other corrections.
Carolyn, you good?
All good.
I make a motion to approve the city council minutes of October 19th, 2020 with the correction Randy sent by email.
All second.
We have a motion by Van Broderick and a second by Carolyn Lundberg. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Council reports. Randy, you want to start us off, seeing as you're online? That'd be great.
Well, it's been a quiet 2 weeks at my house, so I haven't been able to get out and about and been isolated for a couple of weeks now, so I don't really have anything to report, but thank you for asking, Mayor.
Okay. Carolyn, you want to go next?
Yes, not a lot on my end. Things were a bit quiet, but it was really delightful on, I see we have Heath here online, Friday evening. Friar Park looked like there were stars all over the park. I should send a cute picture. So our Parks and Rec was really creative with COVID. Normally there's a Halloween activity at the community center, which obviously social distancing wasn't going to be achieved indoors. And so they came up with a really creative solution, and they had, Heath, what was the official title? It was kind of like an Easter egg hunt in the dark. Flashlight candy search. Yes, it was darling, and there was a huge turnout, and kids went all around the edges of the path, and the lights were off on the path, and in the middle, all the grass, there were just all kinds of treats everywhere, and they had to get their little flashlights when he said go, and it was a lot of fun. And they had fun music blasting from speakers, and they did a great job, and I think the community loved it. So it was really clever.
Plus, we had a full
Darling.
moon as well, right?
A blue moon.
Blue moon, there we
Blue
go.
moon, yes.
Well,
So,
kudos to the rec department. Thank you.
yes. And
All
that's
right.
all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Van?
Yeah, just one item. I appreciate city and staff for helping out. We had a request from a resident regarding neighboring horses and what's permitted with smell, flies, and all the things that go with it. And it was
I'm sorry, I
interesting
don't mean to laugh too much.
to look at our current code, which basically says, hey, that's kind of a little bit what comes with horses like
A little
that.
bit of country, right?
Yeah, so I have forwarded that information on to the people and left a message with them. I'll follow up with them to see if there's any, if they wanted to send that letter that you had mentioned. But, so thank you, Mike and Adam, for getting that information. And I just forwarded it on to them so they could see it as well. But, so thank you for that help.
All right. Okay, Adam?
Okay, that was quick. Just FYI, so we've got our next upcoming council meetings November 16th and December 7th. Mayor, I did want to ask again, just given the state of increasing COVID cases, do you still want to meet with an anchor location or do everything on Zoom over our next meeting or two? What are your thoughts?
You know, it's interesting. I'm okay with still having an anchor location, and the reason I say that, I just went through a briefing with the Utah Leagues of Cities and Town, and I'll get those slides that were presented from the national people. They came to Utah, visited with the governor and the health officials, and it was pretty insightful to see that the issue is not, I mean, we've kind of got this social distancing down for the most part. We know what we need to do, and we're mindful if we're sick, we're not coming to meetings. And what they say is they're finding more and more about how the spread of this is occurring. So I'll get those and I'll share those with the council, and maybe we can have that discussion to decide. But I feel as safe here in this location as with the social distancing and what we're doing, wearing masks, that I'd still like to provide the opportunity for the citizenry if they want to physically come. Because I've heard a lot of people about voting, they still want to have that physical presence where they can physically see and do. I'm not saying that's always the best thing to do, but people have different desires, and I'll leave that up to the council. If you feel like maybe we shouldn't do that, I would be fine with that as well. I don't want to require anyone to have to come here. So, any discussion, Carolyn, or?
Well, I like how it's set up like tonight, so anybody that needs to can Zoom in and people can come if they want. I like that option being available.
Yeah.
And as long as we're following the current guidelines, which do change, and we continue to monitor those, I think we can do it safely.
I agree.
Okay,
Good plan.
so status quo, let's keep going. Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Okay. Well, we'll just continue to send out a Zoom link for just the council members then, or if we have any applicants that happen to not be able to come, they can join us that way. But wouldn't be sending that out in most circumstances for the general public to be on Zoom, but since we have it in 8 locations, so. Just an FYI status on the police chief position. So it closed last Wednesday. I spent Thursday and Friday with Chief Adams. His last day was Saturday. We just did a high-level review together of those applications. We had 40 applications. 37 of those have a bachelor degree. Another 13 or 14 have a master's degree. Got at least a dozen that have been current or former chiefs or deputy chiefs or lieutenants. Very qualified group. We have one in-house candidate, which causes a little bit of dilemma on how we involve our police department in an unbiased way, where they feel comfortable sharing their feelings about the candidates. And so we're working on that process. I'm continuing to go through all of the applications, and then scoring and ranking those. And our intent right now is to likely we will be sending out to our top probably 10 to 15 candidates some questions that we would like them to respond to. Interestingly, Orem City, when they went through this exercise recently, had about half of their top applicants not choose to respond to those questions, and so it helped narrow their field. I don't know how many of these applicants applied for the Orem chief position, so we're not going to duplicate all the questions, but Mayor, I'll loop you into those before we publish that. And then we'll do a round of meet and greets, most likely with the police department. I'd like to get their input and buy-in on our top 5 or so candidates. Final interviews and presentations by those individuals. So we've got several weeks to go through this process. This is a big position to fill, but we're fortunate. It looks like we have some really good candidates. Heath, we've got you on board for the newsletter for December. Just an FYI.
I saw that, thank you.
General elections tomorrow. Thanks, Kathy, for sending out notices and keeping things up to date on the website and Facebook and things. Citywide Cleanup is November 13th through the 22nd, and that's where we have the dumpsters in various locations. And then coinciding with that, we're also doing the leaf bag pickup again. Mayor, thank you for helping.
Yeah,
To get a truck
I went down to get the truck, let's see, today's Monday, last week, and I was ahead of the game. They weren't quite ready for me. But they called me today and said they've got one ready for me, so, yeah, it's good.
Thank you. That's a really nice thing that you do that. Just a reminder, the Thanksgiving dinner event was canceled. The mayor, after discussing amongst he and his, I'm assuming with Karen, and then let us know that felt it was best with the virus that we cancel this year. So we'll look to do that next year. The tree lighting, that's something I did want to get. Heath had mentioned some concern of bringing a big crowd together. We have not invited any school to participate this year, given everything that's going on. He had mentioned they thought it may be fun to try a broadcast of that and just have a tree lighting countdown, something that we send out a link and invite people to participate if they want to online. Heath, does that sum that up?
Yeah, that sums it up very well. We'd also like to take maybe the float or another vehicle and bring Santa around the major areas of the city that same night or maybe the Friday. Just something just to pass by. It costs us very little, but if the council was all right with that, we'd go ahead and go with that.
Yeah, I think, Keith, it would be nice to do something, but make sure that we do it in a socially distancing way. It might be nice to have whoever you choose or we choose to read the story. That could be done. You know, that's one individual could do that. And then we could have the countdown, you know, just so we have a minimal number of people that are there, that are participating, and then just make it all virtual so people can tune into it. And the Santa,
We were actually thinking about even pre-recording it on the night or two before and just putting it out there on Facebook. So it's not a live event, but that'll be during your council meeting as well, which needs to be considered in the future. So yeah, if we want to do it live, it'll be just a little bit of background music for 2 minutes and 3, 2, 1, very low key. So there's nobody around, including a lot of staff. So we
well, your suggestion of recording it might be the right way to do. That way, people won't be encouraged to just inadvertently to come and show up. So,
that's what we were thinking.
yeah. Okay. We good with that?
Well, some of that is TBD, so we'll keep you in the loop as best as we can there on that, so. Just an FYI, I wanted to bring up to you, if you hear from any residents or business owners, we had 7 water meters that were discovered in August to have had multiple months. A couple of them even went a couple of years where they did not register and read properly. The individuals were receiving a bill and paying a base rate, but not the usage rate. Got 7 of those. 2 have paid all of that in full. 2 are making payments, and we've got 3 that haven't decided, and 1 that's contesting some of that. So just an FYI, if you hear anybody with concerns on utility bills, refer them back to me, and I'll get them to the right people, and we'll try to take care of that as best as we can. With that, just as an FYI, the mayor had a great recommendation as I talked to him on that. With Rocky Mountain Power, they average usage if there's any meters that have gone bad, and so they won't charge the full amount. So we're charging a lesser averaged amount over the months that weren't paid. And of no fault of the owners, it was a meter and billing mistake. And so just an FYI, we're trying to get through that as best we can. So,
How was that discovered, Adam?
the meters, for some reason, it didn't register, and then all of a sudden in August, all 7 of them kicked in,
Oh,
started registering. So what happens, our water department actually has a laptop that has, it's similar to a Bluetooth device that will, as they drive down the street, it pings the water meters and then fills in the meter reading into a spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet's uploaded to some software for billing, and then those numbers are automatically generated in the utility bill. And so, the individuals were paying their bills, and so it wasn't showing up as a non-payment, but the usage was showing as 0. So they assumed they were current, we assumed they were being billed correctly, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, those meters kicked in, and we just think it was a software glitch, and they showed as owing hundreds, in several cases, thousands of dollars, and so they called us.
okay, so I was wondering.
Yeah, so it was a gigantic bill in some cases. But what we're asking is for them to pay. We're giving them no late fees, no penalties, pay over multiple months, try to get current. And we'll keep you informed if we have any concerns or issues there. I think that is it for me, Mayor.
Okay, any questions for Adam? We good? All right, let's go ahead and move on we don't have any presentations or announcements. Open session for public comment. Is anyone here to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, you want to state your name and address, and then you can stay there. We can probably hear you from there.
And I don't know if this is the place to start. Tammy AC, 1054 East 50 South. them, you know, can we chalk his tires or whatever, see how long, because it's always there. I think he works weird hours. And so he'll be gone here and there, and then when the police have showed up, you know, then he'll move it. But he has plenty of space to park in front of his own place and kind of a side pad. But it's terrible. There's hundreds of people in and out of our subdivision every day, and we have to look and peer and try to get around this guy. So what I'm suggesting is there is a meter, a fire hydrant, and I'm wondering, so he parks between the fire hydrant and the turn-in, which is 2 car lengths, parks back as far as he can, but I'm wondering if maybe the only way to do it, I think, would be to paint the curb red. But I've talked to many of my neighbors, and they've said, oh, I'm so sick and tired of having to peer around this guy. We don't know what to do. So I don't know if we start with you all, we don't know where to start.
So you feel it's a safety hazard to,
It's a
it's,
safety hazard.
because you can't see.
It's a big old Dodge 350 truck. Sometimes there's even a trailer attached. And so as we're turning left, so we're looking up the hill towards the church, pulling out on 1025 East, he's always there. He's always to our left. So as we're trying to turn either direction, to go down 200 or to go up, we have to peer around this big old truck. And it's been going on for a couple years. And like I said, I've contacted the police numerous times, but every time, then he starts moving it again. And I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I just don't understand why he can't park in Orem. He lives in Orem, in front of his property, in front of his house, and then allow us as a neighborhood to go in and out of our neighborhood freely.
Is it a white truck? It's on Google Earth right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Random.
Can you repeat the intersection address? It's a little bit hard.
200 south and 1025 east. You can see it on the
So if
Google
he's
Earth
on
right now if you go to,
Google Earth, you can tell that it's clearly an issue. And Mayor would probably drive past there quite a bit on 200 south, up and down. It's always there.
Yeah, I'll have to take a special look and just make sure, but
He tries to park back, you know, but it still is a problem, and I don't understand why he does it anyway. As soon as snow hits, he's just a target for somebody to slide into him, but it's a pain coming in and out of there every day, 2 and 3 times, and you're having to look around him, and
Does
Yeah.
anybody
you're
talk
looking
to him?
uphill too. You're looking
well,
uphill.
the officers, I mean, I've talked to I was on a walk one day, and there was an officer right there, and I talked to the officer, and he said, yeah, and this has been last summer maybe. Finally, I'm just tired of it. I just,
yeah.
But nobody's made any direct contact besides officers with him.
no. I don't know, I don't wanna be confrontational with them. I don't know how to best do it. But you can see it right there.
Just west of the church, right there. There's his white truck right there.
There he is right there.
Yes, that's it.
And it's there 24/7.
And which residence does he belong
Lives
to?
right across the street. He lives where I'm pretty sure he lives kind of where there's the wider parking, because he does have.
There's a
sometimes the
trailer.
trailer is over on the other side. But again, I'm like, why can't he park on the Orem side? It's not that I don't love him, because he's in Orem, it's just like, this doesn't make sense to me. He's not parking in front of his residence.
He has an ample side pad in front of his trailer, if that's his.
It is his
residence.
residence. I've seen him come and go across. And so you can see up, up a little bit, you'll see that there is a hydrant. So there is some red curbing there. And I can't remember exactly how far, yes, see, there he is. So again, it's a big old truck, and again, sometimes he's got the trailer attached. But my suggestion would be, is there a way, because I can't remember back in, driver's ed, I can't remember how far you have to park back from an intersection.
I think it's 20 feet, isn't it?
It's 25 feet. From
25 feet,
the intersection.
yeah,
So I don't know,
And he's sitting at about 35 to 40 feet
yeah.
from the intersection.
from the intersection in that photo
That
on Google Earth.
And I think he probably learned a little bit to stay back, because there have been some complaints, but I mean,
Well, it won't get cited.
we won't get cited.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, I mean, every single day, and you know, there's 1,000 people pulling in and out, you know, not people per se, but, you know, the traffic flows in and out of there all day long, and we all have to peer around him.
Well,
You had
there's,
mentioned painting the red curb. Do you know, do the
Yeah, that's
people,
where it is, right there.
do the people that live on that corner, would they care if that was,
It's a rental, I don't think so, they've never parked on that corner.
but nobody's asked them
I've
either.
never talked to the renters, they park in their driveway. They either park in, I've never had anybody, other than guests, if they have guests, they'll park on the street, at that Linden house. But they're always up off of the street, again, because they're on a corner, they don't wanna get wiped out. So again, yeah, there
are
Yeah,
three
we'll
schools
take a look at it.
that feed from there.
And we'll talk to our police department and city attorney and see what we can do there. So there is an allowance where somebody can park up to, I believe it's 48 hours, Brian?
Yeah.
On a public street, and so as long as they're moving it periodically,
Right.
there's some more limitations in the winter time. But if it's a clear vision hazard, we can have our city engineer look at that as well and see if we
You
can.
know, if it was a little Toyota Corolla, I don't think you'd be having the problems, but it's a full-sized truck. I don't know, I mean, Mayor could drive and try to do it, you all could drive fast
Yeah.
as me, he's always there.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you live on the other side of the street, you normally park your cars adjacent to your house, but
Right.
obviously he's chosen not to do that, it appears, and
Probably easier in the morning for him to.
jump in and go downhill, right?
Right. But, and again, it's been going on for numerous years,
Yeah.
two at least. So, I don't know, did I start in the right place for this?
Well, it's a good place to start. I mean, you know, we'll at least have that discussion, check the ordinance and have our safety engineer look at it and see what, from a legal city point of view, what we can do.
Maybe somebody with a little more bang than me could say, this has become a problem. We don't wanna take other action, but this has become a problem for our citizens in Linden.
And it may be just a simple discussion with him saying, you know, it's come to our attention and, you know, we want to be good neighbors. And I don't know if it's something you can mitigate yourself by parking on the other side of the street, you know, just a friendly discussion. And being one person removed, someone that's not directly involved in the situation, but just someone that maybe has that conversation, so.
Sure. Well, I think he's a good guy, I saw him doing some kind of service project, so I don't think he's, you know, a bad dude. I just think his choices need to be,
Well, he may not even be thinking about it too
he may
much.
not be, true.
So that's, you know, that's the one part that we need to figure out, so. Okay. Anything else? Is that it?
I think so for now.
All right. Well, thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming. Okay, anyone else? I assume everyone else is okay. Let's go ahead and move on to, we don't have any consent agenda items. Number 8 is a discussion item on short-term rentals. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Just wanted to follow up from a couple council meetings ago when we discussed short-term rentals, and we had some discussion at that time of looking at kind of a general ordinance, and then there was some feedback afterwards. So I think, as staff, we just kind of want to get some direction on what we would like to do, if we just want to hold for now and just monitor things, or if there's something if we still want to look at some type of general ordinance.
Yes, I think the email that I wrote and shared with everyone. So interestingly, just I think this week or the past week, Airbnb, I mentioned that I spoke with some residents that are super hosts, feel that they are very responsible super hosts who are basically somewhat invisible in their neighborhood. You know, you don't see anyone parking or coming and going hardly at all. They're quite successful with it. Airbnb sent out an email to all super hosts this week that they are now banning events and parties on their platform. and also capping the number of renters to 16. So in her opinion, she felt like, hey, I know that, there's been a few maybe hosts that have been, creating nuisances or disturbances in their community, and the Airbnb community is kind of self-regulating somewhat. Now, there are half a dozen platforms now, so whether all the platforms will adopt these same good neighbor practices, hopefully will occur.
You
So-
used the term "her." Is that through Airbnb, or was that somebody locally that had a concern?
Had the concern?
Yeah, did somebody locally have a concern? You had just said "her" in that, this is what they're doing. And so I was trying to decide who that was in this particular case.
So someone that I know of in my neighborhood
That operates.
is a super host. So she's a regular, and she uses Airbnb as her primary choice of platform. But so she informed me, and I did go on their news press release and read the details of that. So, but like I said, there's about half a dozen or so platforms that you can find, and the new startup ones are happening. So, yes.
Can you tell me if this gal is, this super host, is she on site while she has guests?
Yes, so I think for me, she is homeowner occupied. So like Mike mentioned, 9 of the 12 or the 9 of the 20 or so that we know that maybe are renting short-term rentals are they must be homeowner occupied because they're using an accessory apartment. So my question is, how much do we really want to dive in and start to regulate it? Is it an issue in our community yet? Is the industry somewhat responding and regulating itself? Do we want to say, okay, these need to be homeowner occupied versus non-owner occupied? Do we want to require a business license, or is that an unnecessary, bureaucracy? Some of the accessory apartment owners have said to me, well, we paid all the fees and we're in compliance for accessory apartments, so why would we need to have, whether we are renting long-term, short-term, why would we have another layer of eyes from the city if we're doing it responsibly and following the ordinances and the code? How is it how does it matter in what way we obtain the revenue for the accessory apartment? So those are just questions that were raised. If we don't feel that, is there a problem that needs to be addressed? Can those problems be addressed with current ordinance and code that's on the books now? Those are the things that I think would be helpful to discuss.
Have there been any complaints come in so far? And if so, what are the complaints?
The only one complaint that I've had is the one across from Wadley Farms that was renting. Parking, renting it for events, wedding receptions, family gatherings. So that was the only one. I have, since our initial discussion, I've had 2 individuals call me and ask what our regulations were in Linden, because they were looking at purchasing homes for Airbnb, but that's the only complaint I've had. I believe there may have been another one from a council member. Randy, was that Councilman Powell? Did you receive a complaint too?
There is. There's one in my neighborhood that I've been alerted to. We had a gentleman that did come and vocalize it in the open public session and during his comments. And so there has been other complaints, but I would say that they're not official ones. Maybe, and probably more on the lines of concerns versus complaints.
And I did send the home across the street from Wadley Farms, I did send them a letter, not addressing Airbnb, but just addressing events and things like that. And I never got a response from them. I sent that about a month ago, but so I probably need to check with Alan and see if things have calmed down over there.
So when you send that, do you send that to the actual residents? And are they owner occupied, or does it?
No, these owners live in Virginia, and so.
It was mailed to Virginia.
It was mailed to Virginia. Their mailing address is, they had two addresses, one here in Linden and one in Virginia, so I sent one to both of them. The one locally was returned to me.
Yes, and one of the discussion points that I had with some community members was, we have these event centers that have to go through quite a lengthy and onerous process to establish themselves and meet the requirements of the city. So it seems like if someone has a short-term rental, it's kind of circumventing all the business licensing and permitting and review of impact on the neighborhood. Think of, how many meetings we had for, Walker Farms and the community that came in and, all the input that was received to craft, allowing them to have that use. And so I would like to probably explore that, even though Airbnb has established a no events policy, because there are so many platforms potentially in the marketplace, maybe that's something we address, is, stating that events and parties and over so many people is not allowed. If council feels that that's fair. And the other question would be, in my mind, if we want to require that they're owner occupied, or do we want to require the business license? I'm kind of leaning away from requiring a business license. It feels like we already have an issue of accessory apartments operating without the proper licensing and oversight, and it would just be another layer on top of a layer that's, maybe not working as well as it should. And so, anyway, so I'll put it out there to you all.
I think when I was researching about short-term rentals, I think the justification that most cities were licensing for was that they're operating a commercial business now out of the home instead of just a accessory apartment or something. So that was the only research I found dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Randy.
I'll just have to say, I appreciate all the time that staff has put into this really great report for our discussion. There's several things in here that are stuck out to me that I appreciate that they were brought forward, and mainly has to do with public safety in a very broad scope. And because I do feel like I'm at a disadvantage being here on the computer, I would love if we can continue talking about this in the future. I'm not looking to enact anything subtly, but I do think that some really basic guidelines and ordinance structure needs to be put into place so that we are not chasing this.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have the full council be a part of that discussion. I think that would, for each of our neighborhoods, maybe we do a little bit of reconnaissance where we're out talking to people and just seeing, are there more issues there that we're not aware of? And that could be beneficial in our discussion as a council, what we decide as far as regulating this or what kind of impact it's having on our community. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, we had talked about last time maybe just having some really rudimentary basic framework to start with, and then we can watch.
Monitor it.
Not too much be chasing a problem, as Randy says, but just sort of watch how the ebb and flow of the industry may go. And if we start to feel like, it seems as in this data that Mike put together, the various cities, you can kind of see cities that are neighboring sister cities in Utah County all the way down to Hurricane, Utah. It appears as maybe those communities have more of them, they, put in place more language, more to the ordinance and the oversight. So that's the question: is do we have a problem yet? Really, that would be the number one question. For example, I don't feel that we would need to have in nuisance language about noise. We already have one on the books already. So where can we just rely upon if there's an issue, neighbors can call about parking or noise? Do we need to duplicate that in a short-term rental ordinance necessarily and just simplify
And then have a
everything?
point of contact here locally to make sure that if there is an issue, that we've got a way to communicate that issue in a timely way so we can get it resolved, so.
The other question that was brought up to me was, so yes, I think the two areas that for me stick out the most, maybe right now, is events, parties. Because I would like to see that those who've, the 9 business entities that have gone through a lot of hard work to have that.
That's where the
allow-
party should be.
That's where they need to be, right? And protect their interest and endeavors, and then protect the neighbors who might be impacted by unauthorized events and parties. And then the question of, owner occupancy, should that be required, yes or no? I'd love to discuss that as a group.
I know you have you have at least two that,
Yeah.
2 homes, when looking at that Airbnb, they're owned by an investor, so I know there's at least
So
2
sometimes
that are
they're-
not
yeah.
owner-occupied.
So are they being responsible? I guess what the short-term rental individual said to me was, well, do you need to put restrictions on things if there's people doing it responsibly? So,
Well, it's never the
yeah,
responsible people that we need to set ordinances for, huh?
right.
So it's the ones that are maybe not doing their full due diligence. And I think the consumer who's taking advantage of these properties perhaps assumes that the provider is meeting some sort of a benchmark. And I would dare say that it's not the case in a good portion of these. It doesn't mean that they're not exercising good faith in what they're doing, but it doesn't mean that they actually are trying to make sure that the consumer is fully aware that they're either protected or not protected. And, what you get when you go to a hotel. And we all know that that would be a lot different standards in a short-term rental situation. But I am concerned that we are not providing a full scope of protection for not just the residents, but those who are the consumers of these products.
Mike, in your experience of where you're looking at this in a broad way, do you feel like there's any other points that maybe would be pertinent to Linden right now, where we're at
We
with
could
this?
probably address parking. Some cities say everybody's got to be able to park off the street. You got to have 1 stall per bedroom or things like that. We could look at a parking standard too. That might be, because that's something we can enforce. So if someone is having a huge family event and they're parked all over the front lawn, that's something we can, address as well. I think just going back, one more time to the business license, I think that is kind of our enforcement mechanism too, because if they do have a business license, then you could revoke that if they become a habitual problem. So those are kind of but we could address that later as well if we see issues. So
Maybe we require any rental, short term, that they register as an accessory apartment and go through that process to qualify to be a short-term rental. That might be a backdoor way of accounting for all of our accessory apartments. I'm saying that somewhat in tongue-in-cheek, but I don't know, maybe that's something we can look at to see if we can
Although you
tighten.
can just rent a room in your shared space.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
That's
where
the
we
question.
will go on owner occupancy or not, but if the owner was not there, it seems to me you would want to make sure that somebody that was going to do the rental was noticed of the local codes. I mean, we've done short-term rentals, when we go to Disneyland and get a house, you do not park on the street. It is very specific on what your parking is and where they must be parked, what hours you can be outside making noise. And I'm sure they're the king of the restrictions there, but you can see where they come from. So for me, the parking, I certainly wouldn't want somebody to rent it and have a wedding reception there. That is just contrary to what we want, but I don't know how you define events. But sometimes the renter then would have, if they know what the occupancy was, you know that what events you could do there and what events you couldn't do there. But again, I don't want it to get so burdensome and difficult to do. I hope we keep it really simple but with just a few guidelines.
That was an interesting point that you mentioned is accessory apartment, those that are current accessory apartment holders like myself, I don't think in the 9 years I've had a legal accessory apartment, I have ever received a communication from the city saying, hey, by the way, as an accessory apartment, here's some things to keep in mind, or any communication or education, because I think the only time I looked at the regulations was when I was first applying. It was so long ago that those aren't fresh in my mind. And so that's something that maybe a letter could go out, as we're thinking through these things of, hey, just keep in mind X, Y, Z, here's parking, here's noise, here's, whatever best practices the city is hoping for, to those that, because I pay you have the letter come each year if you're renting to family or non-family and that, but there's no education
Guidelines,
coming,
education,
guidelines,
yeah.
maybe a reminder of guidelines. And you could do it at that point, say, if you choose to have short-term, here's some guidelines. Here's the guidelines overall.
I think if you can keep the parking under control and off the street, if you limit the number of people that can be in the unit, and then a notice of local codes, I think we're on our way to a pretty good start there.
I agree.
And I just think, Linden, people are actually coming here to do a short-term rental. I mean, what's the attraction? I mean, what? I mean, Disneyland I can see. I
Yes.
mean,
Well, people,
or the ski resorts I can see, or someplace of,
when people do these themed rooms, so I've seen some on Airbnb's website, so someone will do a library theme, and so, people will like to go there and just relax and read a book, and so. People,
Wow.
Yeah, so this theme room thing is big as well.
kind of catching on, huh?
My neighbor is busy constantly because people are coming into Utah for BYU, dropping off a missionary conference.
Okay, yeah.
Just,
it's
and
pretty-
sometimes it's
I can see that,
non-church-related
but
stuff too. We're
That's
within
usually
that
gonna be a
scope.
short, really short.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 2 or 3 days at the most.
Or they
probably.
have a family member, a family event is happening, and the family member they're visiting can't host them.
We have all of these wedding venues that would draw in families.
It's
that would
true.
like to stay close
That's
by.
true, yeah.
So I can see where there would be consumers that would like to stay close by one of our venues.
So could I just put some discussion points together then?
great.
Before I write an ordinance, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, item number 9 is discontinue emergency declaration resolution. Review and action. Adam, you doing that one?
As Brian and I and Kelly and Chief Adams had discussed, our emergency declaration was continuing the way it was written. It was in effect until the governor lifted the order to have us move to the green level. The state has changed that tiered color level and gone to these high, medium, and low risk areas. The status of our county still technically is in a high risk, but because of some of the changes at the state level and just the lengthy period of this, and now that our COVID money is being spent, the deadline for all of that expenditure was today, and so we felt like it was prudent to just discontinue the emergency declaration. this resolution for your consideration.
I think there was some discussion at the governor's level that the period of time which you can have an emergency declaration was a short period of time, and that's exceeded that, and you really, I guess, legally can't extend that, and so,
There's quite a few discussions going on at the state level. I'm not sure that they've reached the final conclusion of what their conclusion is. But, you know, with the county going the way they have as well, just recognizing that the governor really has taken the steps to make sure that the mandates that are necessary are in place. We just kind of thought it was appropriate to let the state take care of that.
yeah, I think that's great. So we just need to,
I will make a
yeah,
motion.
go ahead.
I move to approve Resolution 2020-25-R to discontinue Linden City's emergency status as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Go ahead, Randy, you want to take it?
I'll let you, Carolyn.
Okay, second.
Carolyn gets the second. We'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is closed session discussion. So we need a motion to enter a closed session.
I make a motion to enter into a closed session. Oops, sorry.
Okay, Randy's
Second.
got the motion, Van's got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we just need to make sure that there's nobody else in the room.
Very few people in the room.
All right. And the Facebook, or
Question
the,
online, just a second ago, we had somebody that was logged in as state presidency with a picture of Jesus. Was that?
Yes, that was really fun, that Jesus was attending our meeting. I took a screenshot of that.
Keith or Mike, was that maybe another device that you were logged in as?
Do you think it was Mike?
Keith, you haven't been translated or anything there? Okay.
He can't answer that question.
So maybe that was somebody logged in under their phone or something, but that could have been Mike. Did Mike leave?
there's some folks coming in.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
Now it says connected to audio again. This says state presidency.
Should I stop his then? Maybe I will.
You know what? I don't know what that is, and so I am going to, if they keep popping in there, I am going to block them out, so.
Adam?
And then we still have YouTube still functioning.
Wonder if that is Jake trying to join us. So I sent Jake a text and said we were ready to go with this closed session because he wanted to join. All right. I think we're okay, Mayor, so.
Yeah, we,
Live on YouTube,
Oh, thank you, Randy.
at least not a delay.
we have to wait for Brian to come back in. There were two people that were trying to come in, and he's having a discussion with them right now.
Okay, let me end our YouTube session. Thank you, Randy. There's too many things to try to balance here, so.
That's okay.
They couldn't have timed that any more poorly.
Yeah. Really? Any counsel you want to give us, Kathy, about voting, timelines? Can people,
Get it done.
what do we have,
Too
6?
late to mail now, I mean.
Too late to mail, but you can delay